They fined me $750 for unauthorized exterior color variance, which is HOA talk for my kid repainting our porch railing in the same color it already was. That notice came 48 hours after the president's husband trespassed across my dock, measuring property lines with a tape that wasn't his. It was the third time in 6 weeks they'd posted something on my door without signature or timestamp. Welcome to HOA Society. I'm Daniel Keene, civil engineer by trade, homeowner by necessity, accidental investigator by circumstance, right here in northern Idaho, where lakefront sunsets used to mean peace. If you've ever had a board turn your home into a battlefield, subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. And tell me, where are you watching from? I want to know how far this HOA madness reaches. I bought the place on Birch Lake 2 years after my wife passed. She loved the water, used to say reflection steadies people. I thought raising our son here would be healing. I didn't expect bylaws longer than the state constitution or a committee that met more often than city council. But grief dulls judgment. I just signed, smiled, and painted the mailbox according to approved neutrals. Everything turned the week I refused their beautification contribution, a voluntary $100 donation that somehow had due dates. The president, Claudia Mercer, cornered me outside the mail kiosk with her tablet glowing. "Everyone who cares about property values participates," she said, voice smooth as varnish. "If you don't, we review your compliance record. It's policy." I told her policy didn't override state law. She smiled like a teacher about to grade a failing test. Within 10 days, citation for improper trash can placement, $50, unapproved porch plantings, $75, and exterior lighting variance, $90. Each came on different letterhead, each unsigned. When I emailed the management company, they forwarded my note to the board, Claudia herself, and marked it resolved. That's when I started printing everything, date stamping every envelope, recording every interaction. Idaho's a one-party consent state, in case you're wondering. My neighbor, Walt, retired electrician, coffee thermos glued to his hand, watched me tape one of their warnings inside my garage. "They did the same to me over my flag bracket," he said. 3 notices, then silence when I cited the statute. "You gotta outpaper them." His basement looked like a miniature records room. Folders labeled by month, HOA letters highlighted in fluorescent yellow. "That's the only language they speak," he told me. The wound reopened one rainy night when my son asked if we'd have to move. He's 9. His mother's guitar still hangs by his bed. "No," I said, forcing certainty I didn't own. But I felt that panic, the same helplessness from hospital corridors, rising again. They could lien the property for unpaid fines. They could technically foreclose, all over paperwork. That's when fear hardened into motive. I took my engineering precision to their filings. Online portal, county recorder, corporation registry. Turns out our HOA renewed its charter every 5 years. Next renewal due, August 14th, 90 days away. Only one officer's signature on the last filing, Claudia's. Not 2, as required by state nonprofit law. Minor detail maybe, but details build leverage. Late that night, while my son slept, I printed the entire CCR, 127 pages, and started marking conflicts. My desk light caught dust motes like lake snow. Each clause I read sounded less like community protection and more like control architecture. Owners must obtain prior written approval from Architectural Review Committee, ARC, for any exterior change. ARC had one member, Claudia. By dawn, I'd built a map of my enemies. 6 board me, embers, 3 proxies, 1 management firm, all signing checks from an account ending 2381. The same account, I'd later discover, funded Claudia's husband's landscaping company, recipient of $42,600 last year under Common Grounds Maintenance. Next morning, I called the county inspector about the new gate they'd installed at the lake access road. "Permitted?" I asked. He paused. "No record here. Should be. Send photos." I did. That pause told me something. Their house of cards had missing permits. Knowledge nugget number 1. In most states, HOAs aren't exempt from municipal permitting requirements for common area structures. If they build without a permit, every homeowner shares the liability. I printed the email chain and slid it into a binder labeled Structural Violations. When I closed the rings, the snap echoed like a promise. By week's end, I had evidence. Maybe not enough for war, but enough for opening shots. What I didn't yet know was how deep Claudia's web ran, or how much she'd risk once she realized I'd started untangling it. And by then, silence wasn't going to save me. The following Tuesday, I received a notice of non-compliance, escalated review. Same typeface, same smug spacing. Claudia's digital signature sat at the bottom like a brand. The accusation: unapproved dock extension, violation subject to fines up to $1,000 day. My dock hadn't changed since purchase, and they had no engineer's report to claim otherwise. Still, the threat of $1,000 a day burned. I called the number listed, went straight to voicemail. "This is Daniel Keene, Lot 32, I said. "There's no modification, and you'll need certified proof before levying anything." I hung up. Within the hour, 2 SUVs idled by my driveway. One of them carried the HOA's so-called compliance officer, a 20-something intern with a clipboard and mirrored sunglasses. He started snapping photos of my yard. I stepped out. "You got a warrant?" "HOA authorization." He said it, like it meant something sacred. "Authorization doesn't beat state law," I replied, filming him. "You're trespassing. Leave before I call the county." He left, muttering into his radio. The next morning, Claudia herself sent a wellness check through the sheriff's office, claiming aggressive behavior. The deputy who arrived was polite enough. He knew the game. "She's been filing those lately," he admitted quietly. "Document everything, Mr. Keene." I already was. If you've ever dealt with an HOA flexing like a small kingdom, tell me in the comments, did they ever try to weaponize local police like that? If you haven't, what's your tactic for holding them accountable? And for any board lurkers watching, this is your reminder: power without law is just theater. Walt came by later with a cardboard box of old meeting minutes. "Got tired of keeping them," he said. "Thought you might find patterns." I brewed coffee, spread the pages across my kitchen table. The smell of toner mixed with rain through the cracked window. Meeting after meeting, one name appeared in the vendor lists: Mercer Grounds Maintenance, LLC. Claudia's husband again. I checked the corporate filings. Same address as the HOA's official mailing address. Conflict of interest, plain and simple. Knowledge. Nugget number 2, under Idaho Code. 5-30-30-621. Any director with a direct financial interest in a contract must disclose it in writing and recuse from voting. Failure can void the contract entirely. Now I had leverage, but I needed verification. My ally for that became Marisol Vega, a municipal attorney known for her no-nonsense voice and ink-stained cuffs. She'd left city work to consult homeowners tangled in HOA disputes. Her first question: "You kept the envelopes?" "All of them," I said. "Good," she smiled, flipping through. "Certified, dated, and misaddressed. You've got procedural defects and conflict. Exposure. We'll start quiet. Records request, not lawsuit." She helped me draft a certified letter demanding access to financials under state nonprofit transparency rules. When Claudia received it, she called an emergency board session. I wasn't invited, but Walt's cousin was. She recorded the audio legally. "We can't give him that data," Claudia hissed. "He's adversarial." Another member whispered, "The statute says any owner can inspect records." Claudia slammed her gavel. "Then we'll change the policy." That's when I knew she'd cross into illegality before surrendering control. By mid-June, the retaliation escalated. My mailbox flag was mysteriously snapped off. HOA Patrol left printed notices under my windshield. Online community board filled with posts calling me combative and unstable. Someone even filed a noise complaint about my son's drum lessons at 4 p.m. on a Saturday. I didn't bite. Every incident went into my logbook: date, time, witness. I attached photos, measurements, even decibel readings from a borrowed sound meter. Marisol called it building the evidentiary spine. The real crack came July 3rd, when the HOA circulated a dues increase ballot. They claimed rising insurance costs justified a 20% hike, but the attached spreadsheet showed landscaping enhancements, $18,000 projected. I compared that to last year's total vendor payout, $42,600 already spent. Enhancements on top of that? No chance. I contacted the insurer listed on the HOA policy, posing a polite question about their exposure. The rep's tone shifted mid-call. Wait, you're the engineer? We've been trying to verify maintenance compliance for months. No response from the board. There it was. Documentation gap confirmed. I thanked him, hung up, and printed the call log for my binder. By July 8th, Claudia sent me a cease and desist accusing me of interference with board operations. Marisol smirked reading it. Classic bluff. They done but. It want you sniffing their audit trail. The wound deepened when my son's summer camp sent a late fee reminder. I'd drained most of our savings into fines and certified mailings. I stared at the invoice, feeling the same helplessness I'd sworn off. Walt saw me that evening fiddling with the paper. They're counting on you burning out, he said. You don't fight back by shouting louder. You fight back by owning something they don't know you own. That sentence stuck. Owning something they didn't know I owned. It turned into a thought that wouldn't leave me alone, especially after I remembered the little strip of land at the end of the access road, the one between the lake gate and the public dock. When I'd bought my house, my title search showed a weird easement reference to that parcel, unclaimed after the original developer dissolved. I reopened the file. Parcel, number 88B21, status, dormant. Tax payments current through 2015, none since. Which meant technically it was in tax default limbo. County could auction it any month now. If I could get that parcel before Claudia realized what it meant, I'd control the only legal right-of-way to the water, the same gate she installed without permit. That was the seed of reversal number 1, though at that moment it felt only like intuition, an engineer's itch to fix what's misaligned. The days ahead would test whether intuition could outlast intimidation. The parcel file became my obsession. Every night after work, I'd spread documents across the kitchen table, the faint buzz of the refrigerator filling the silence. Birch Lake shimmered through the blinds, calm, deceptive. I dug through the county assessor's database until I found the chain of title. The easement traced back to 1989, when the original developer reserved ingress and egress rights for community use. But when the developer's LLC dissolved in 2004, the rights lapsed into holder unknown. Nobody claimed it, not even the HOA. That sliver of land, 27 feet wide, 82 feet long, was the keyhole through which the entire community reached the lake. If I controlled it, Claudia's unpermitted gate would stand on my ground. I drove to the county office in Sandpoint the next morning. The clerk, a woman with half-moon glasses, barely looked up. Parcel number? 88B-21, I said. She typed, squinted. Oh, that one. Tax default since 2016. You can file for assignment after publication period. 90 days. You pay the back taxes, $1,742.60 plus fees. After publication? Yup. They post notice 3 times in the local paper. If nobody redeems, it's yours by quitclaim. $1,742.60. The HOA fined me more than that last month alone. I thanked her, grabbed the forms, and left with a pulse like a drumline. That night I sat with Walt on his porch, 2 mugs of black coffee between us. "You're telling me you can buy the ground under their fancy gate?" he asked, eyebrows raised. "If the county lets me," I said, "and if I stay quiet." He chuckled, low and wheezy. "Don't tell anyone until it's stamped." Knowledge nugget number 3. In most states, a tax default parcel reverts to the county and can be reassigned via quitclaim after the redemption period if taxes remain unpaid. Whoever holds that deed controls usage rights, subject to easements and municipal zoning. That weekend, Claudia's crew rolled up with new signage. Private. HOA members only. They bolted it to a post, hammered right through the disputed strip. I filmed everything, measuring from the survey pin, 1 foot into the parcel boundary. Trespass, clean as daylight. July 14th, I mailed the tax payment by certified mail. 90-day clock officially started. I marked the date in my binder and set a countdown on my phone. Meanwhile, retaliation intensified. The HOA issued a special inspection of my home's exterior, citing potential safety hazards. When I asked which code section, they refused to answer. I stood on my lawn watching them photograph my gutter while Claudia leaned against her SUV, arms crossed. "You could have avoided all this, Daniel," she said. "Just follow community standards." "I am," I replied. "State standards." Her smile tightened. "You think you're smarter than the system?" "No," I said, "just reading it more carefully." She turned away, but her parting words carried back through the summer air. "You'll regret testing me." If you're watching this and you've had an HOA threaten you over nothing, tell me, how far did they push before you pushed back? Or at least like the video so others see what these boards get away with. Marisol called later that day. "I've been reviewing their renewal filings. You were right, only one officer's signature. They're technically operating without valid charter since May 1st. My breath caught. Meaning? Meaning any action they take, fines, liens, enforcement, has no legal standing until renewal is recorded. You're dealing with a ghost corporation. I stared out the window, rain flicking against the glass. The board that had spent months terrorizing me wasn't even properly constituted. But if I announced that too early, they'd fix it before I could leverage it. So I told Marisol, we sit quiet until August. She nodded. Let them keep digging. In the following weeks, harassment turned absurd. They claimed my solar lights violated luminosity uniformity. They fined Walt for having a non-standard mailbox flag, red instead of approved bronze. A patrol car parked across from my driveway 3 nights in a row. My son whispered, "Dad, are we in trouble?" "Not us," I said. "Them." I checked the county recorder daily. The quit-claim notice appeared in the local Gazette on July 29th. One of those small ads pages most PLs will swat. Plus skip. I clipped it, dated it, and taped it to the inside of my binder. Claudia's name wasn't listed among interested parties. She hadn't noticed. By August 10th, my countdown hit 4 days. That night, thunder rolled over Birch Lake like cannon fire. I sat at my desk with a lamp haloed in humidity, reading the HOA's latest newsletter. Front page headline, "New security gate ensures exclusive access for members." Photo of Claudia cutting a ribbon. Beneath it, her quote, "We protect what's ours." I smiled. Not for long, Claudia. August 14th, 9:02 a.m. I walked into the county office with a cashier's check. The same clerk recognized me. "You're early," she said. "Couldn't sleep." She stamped the receipt, slid over the deed folder and said, "Congratulations, it's yours." The paper felt heavier than its weight. Rough texture, embossed seal, faint smell of ink. I tucked it into my briefcase like contraband. Visual beat number 1. I drove straight to the lake, stood before the shiny gate, and taped a laminated copy of my new deed right next to their private sign. The sun flashed across the metal as I clicked a photo. My reflection stared back, wet from rain, half smiling. I didn't call Claudia. I didn't need to. She'd find out when she saw the notice taped to her empire. By noon the next day, I knew she'd seen it. Her SUV screeched to a stop at the gate while I was cleaning my truck. I watched from the driveway as she stormed out, blonde hair whipping like a flag in the wind, phone glued to her ear. She read the notice, then ripped it off the post with shaking hands. She pointed across the water toward my house. Even from 100 yards, I could see her lips forming the words, "You're done." But for the first time, I wasn't afraid. That evening, I called Marisol. "She's reacting exactly how we need," she said. "Don't respond. Don't gloat. Let her try to enforce something. Every move she makes now strengthens our case." 3 days later, I received a notice of trespass and gate tampering. Claudia claimed I'd defaced community property. Marisol laughed when she saw it. "Daniel, that gate is literally on your land. She's digging a legal grave." I could almost feel the walls shifting. The narrative that had been all one direction, HOA dominance, homeowner submission, was starting to lean my way. Still, Marisol warned, "Patience, engineer. Let them break their own lines before you draw yours." Mid-August brought the board's quarterly meeting, scheduled in the community hall. They'd advertised a special update on security improvements. I knew what that meant, a public show of authority. Walt nudged me over morning coffee. "You going?" "I'll be there," I said, quietly. Inside the hall, fluorescent lights hummed. Rows of folding chairs faced the stage. Claudia sat center table, gavel ready. The smell of coffee and printer paper mingled like nervous cologne. She opened with a smile too wide to be natural. "We're proud to announce our gate installation is complete and fully compliant," she declared. I leaned toward Marisol, who had joined me under the radar. "Fully compliant?" I whispered. "Sure," she muttered, scribbling a note. "Except for the missing permit, unfiled charter, and the small matter that they built on your property." When Claudia opened the floor for comments, I raised my hand. "Question about the gate permit," I said evenly. "Mr. Keene," she said, voice clipped, "you're out of order." "It's a question. This meeting's agenda includes financial updates, and that structure was paid from common funds," I interrupted. "If it's paid with our dues, we deserve to know if it's insured, permitted, and legally located." The crowd murmured. A few heads turned toward her. "Security details are confidential," she said. Marisol stood, flashing her badge from the Municipal Bar Association. "Not when they affect community liability," she said, "and not when the structure sits on land deeded to a private owner." The room fell silent. Claudia blinked. "What are you talking about?" I opened my briefcase, slid out the deed copy, and placed it on the table with a soft thud. "Parcel 88B21, purchased August 14th. This gate stands 2 feet onto that parcel." She laughed, thin, brittle. "That's ridiculous. That's HOA property." "Not anymore," I said. She turned crimson, whispering furiously to the treasurer. The audience buzzed. That moment wasn't victory. It was ignition. I knew the retaliation would spike, but now I had the leverage and proof. "If you were in my shoes, would you have revealed the deed now or waited for them to act again? Tell me below. These tactical choices decide whether you win quietly or publicly. What's your call?" By the following week, Claudia's crew fenced off the path entirely, padlocked the gate, and posted a restricted entry, pending legal review sign. That was her way of pretending control. I didn't cut the lock. I simply called the county building inspector, forwarded him my ownership record, and waited. 3 days later, he showed up, badge clipped to his belt, clipboard in hand. "You the parcel owner?" he asked. "Yes, sir." He read the coordinates, frowned. "Gates inside your boundary. No permit ever filed. That's a violation under Municipal Code 6302. They'll need to remove it or apply retroactively, but they can't apply without your consent." He wrote it up, signed the form, and handed me a copy. That was the beginning of the real unraveling. Knowledge nugget number 4. An unpermitted structure on another's land constitutes both a zoning violation and a private encroachment. Removal can be compelled by the landowner without compensation. That evening, I placed the inspection report into my binder, next to the quitclaim deed. Each snap of the ring felt like a step toward daylight. Walt whistled when I showed him. "You just bought yourself the keys to the lake, partner." "Not for me," I said. "For everyone." And they locked out. He smiled. "You sound like your wife." That hit deep. I hadn't heard her voice in 3 years, but I could still remember her saying, "Ownership isn't about walls, it's about stewardship." For a second, I let myself feel it, the purpose beneath the paperwork. I wasn't fighting just for revenge anymore. I was fighting to restore what she loved, shared space, fairness, calm water. But the HOA wasn't done. 2 days later, Claudia filed a temporary injunction in county court, claiming trespass and interference with community operations. It was theater, weak but loud. Marisol stayed composed. "Perfect," she said, sliding the papers across my counter. "Now we get a hearing. Neutral authority on the record." The date? September 3rd. Location: County Courthouse, Sandpoint. I circled it on my wall calendar in red. That would be the public showdown, the set piece where the truth and the law would finally share a microphone. The courthouse smelled like disinfectant and old paper. I wore my best jacket, the one my wife bought before she got sick, its collar still carrying a faint trace of her perfume. Outside, rain slicked the flagstones. Inside, fluorescent lights hummed above the pews. Claudia arrived in a crimson blazer, her attorney trailing a briefcase that looked heavier than him. Walt and Marisol sat behind me like bookends, steady, silent, unmovable. Judge Parson took the bench, silver-haired, calm as still water. "Case 22-114, Mercer Homeowners Association versus Daniel Keene, he read. Plaintiff alleges trespass and interference. Defendant claims lawful ownership. Claudia's attorney spoke first, voice sharp as chalk. Your Honor, Mr. Keene affixed unauthorized signage to community property and obstructed member access. Marisol rose. Respectfully, that so-called community property sits on a parcel now privately owned. Deed recorded August 14th, Exhibit A. In addition, the gate was installed without municipal permit, Exhibit B. She handed both to the clerk with surgical precision. The judge adjusted his glasses, reading silently. Then, the faintest smile. Mrs. Mercer, was a permit obtained? Claudia stiffened. The HOA believed it fell under maintenance exemption. That's not what the code says, Parson replied. And you built across a private parcel? Her attorney stammered. We're unaware of ownership change. Then you should have checked before filing trespass. The gavel hit softly, but the sound still cracked through the room. Temporary injunction denied. The parcel owner maintains right of control pending further review. Neutral authority confirmed. That was reversal number 1 made real. Outside, the clouds broke into thin sunlight. Reporters from the local Gazette snapped photos as Claudia walked briskly to her car. Walt muttered, "Guess that's the sound of a throne creaking." But victory carried weight. That night, an anonymous note appeared in my mailbox. You're not safe here. Sell before it gets ugly. The paper smelled faintly of motor oil, edges damp from rain. I burned it in the fire pit, watching the corner curl and blacken, embers floating into the dark. Visual beat number 2. Violation notice curling to ash, wind hissing through pine trees. For the next week, my phone rang non-stop. Neighbors whispering congratulations or fear. Some wanted to help, others just wanted distance. They'll target you harder now, one said. They did. 3 citations in 48 hours. Unapproved flag display. Excessive street parking. Refuse container visible from road. I documented each. Walt helped install a motion camera near the mailbox. Footage caught Claudia's SUV stopping at 2:17 a.m., her husband stepping out with a flashlight. Trespassing again. I filed a report, not to punish, but to protect record integrity. Parsons' earlier warning still echoed. Stay lawful. The stress built. My son started sleeping in my room, spooked by every headlight that passed. I could feel old anxiety clawing through me, the hospital memories, the helplessness. I almost cracked one night, standing by the window clutching her old photo, whispering, "I'm trying, Sarah. I'm keeping him safe." Marisol called the next morning. "They're cornered," she said, voice steady. "When power people lose control, they lash out. Keep your documentation airtight. Every notice, every minute." Then the domino began to wobble. A freelance reporter named Aaron Poe messaged me after the court hearing. "I'm doing a piece on HOA overreach," she said. "Heard yours might be textbook." I didn't answer right away. But when she sent a photo of Claudia's house showing commercial equipment parked on her lawn, clear violation of her own bylaws, I agreed to talk. We met at a diner. She recorded, one-party consent law perfectly noted. "How did it start?" she asked. "Fear," I said, "and a promise I made at a hospital bed." She wrote quietly. When I finished, she looked up. "This isn't just revenge, is it?" "No," I said, "it's repair." Her article hit the local paper 2 days later. Lake HOA President faces backlash over unpermitted structures and conflict of interest allegations. Photos, quotes, court excerpts. It spread fast. HOA forums lit up. The insurer called an emergency audit. The bank froze their reserve account pending verification. Marisol forwarded me the email from their treasurer. Panic in text form. "We can't access funds until compliance review clears. What do we do?" The domino collapse had begun. If you were writing the rules, how much power should a neighborhood board really have? Enough to protect property or too much to protect itself? Drop your take below. I'm curious how you'd balance it. Claudia called a town information session to control the damage. I attended, sitting in the back. She tried to spin the story as misunderstandings exploited by outsiders. But every word sounded thinner, every excuse more brittle. Even her allies avoided her eyes. I realized then, her empire wasn't built on law, it was built on fear. and once fear erodes, the structure collapses under its own weight. Still, I knew the story wasn't over, because after public humiliation, power often seeks redemption or destruction. The week after the article dropped, Birch Lake turned into a rumor mill. You could hear it at the gas station, the coffee shop, even the Sunday market, people whispering about the engineer who owned the lake gate. Some called me a hero, others a troublemaker. I ignored both labels. The truth sat somewhere in between. Claudia stopped driving through the neighborhood. Her husband handled errands now, keeping his hat low, sunglasses on. The rest of the board scrambled like ants after rain. They sent out a letter promising a compliance review and a temporary restructuring. No mention of me or the lawsuit, just corporate smoke. Meanwhile, Marisol and I focused on the leverage we hadn't yet revealed, the HOA's expired charter. She'd been monitoring the Secretary of State's filings daily. If they don't renew by October 1st, she said, they lose all corporate protections. That's when you make your move. I nodded, tightening the binder's latch. Then we give them just enough rope. Still, the retaliation didn't stop. Anonymous accounts started posting on Nextdoor, claims that I was planning to privatize the lake, that I intimidated families. The words stung, not for their lies, but for how easily neighbors believed them. My son asked one night, "Are they going to kick us out?" "No," I said, kneeling beside his bed. "They can't. We're standing on paper stronger than their lies." He nodded, half believing, and drifted to sleep. The following morning, I drove to City Hall with Erin, the reporter. She wanted to film the gate for a follow-up piece. As we stood there, camera rolling, a county truck pulled up, Bullied tour, an inspection division. The officer stepped out, clipboard in hand. "Got a work order," he said. "Removal of unpermitted structure, per code enforcement." Claudia's timing couldn't have been worse. She arrived 10 minutes later, heels crunching gravel. "This is private property," she barked. "Not according to our records," the officer said, pointing to the parcel map. "This strip's deeded to Mr. Keene." She looked at me, eyes blazing. "You think this makes you powerful?" "No," I said. "It makes you accountable." He tagged the gate with a bright orange sticker. "Remove within 14 days or county will remove at owner's expense." Visual beat number 3. The orange tag fluttering in the wind, rain dripping down the metal, like a verdict written in color. That evening, Walt stopped by with 2 beers. "You know what that is?" he said, nodding toward the binder. "What?" "Leverage." He was right. I wasn't just holding papers. I was holding reform. So I drafted a proposal, a document titled Community Restoration Agreement. It offered the HOA a deal. I'd grant perpetual access easement across my parcel for public use, free of charge, if they agreed to adopt a new charter with strict ethics clauses, term limits, open records access, and an independent audit every fiscal year. Marisol read it over. "You're offering reform instead of revenge," she said. "That's how you win twice." I sent it certified mail to the remaining board members, excluding Claudia, who'd already lost her grip on control. I gave them 7 days to respond before filing for declaratory relief. During that week, silence hung over Birch Lake like fog. No patrols, no fines, no newsletters, just stillness. I took my son fishing for the first time in months. We caught nothing, but it didn't matter. He laughed again, real, unguarded laughter. On the 7th day, a letter arrived. The envelope bore the HOA logo, but Claudia's name was missing. Inside, a typed note. "Mr. Keene, the board agrees in principle to your terms. We propose a joint meeting with county oversight to formalize reform and record easement, signed by 3 remaining directors." I called Marisol. She exhaled through the line. "That's reversal 2 waiting to be inked." "Then let's ink it," I said. "If you were me, would you trade full control for reform that helps everyone, even the ones who wronged you? Or would you keep the power and let them drown in their own mistakes? Comment below. I want to see where your moral line sits." The meeting was set for September 28th at the community hall, the same place where Claudia once slammed her gavel. This time, the county ombudsman would preside. Neutral, recorded, and open to all residents. I arrived early. The air smelled of dust and rain-soaked pine. Walt adjusted the microphone stand while Marisol spread out the paperwork. "Ready?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "Ready to build." not burn. By the time residents filled the chairs, the hum of quiet curiosity replaced the tension that used to choke the room. Even Claudia showed up, seated in the back, face pale and tight. The ombudsman opened. "We're here to discuss proposed structural reform following recent compliance findings." I stepped forward, my voice steady. "I don't want control. I want transparency. This community deserves leadership, not rulership." Every eye followed my hand as I laid the proposal on the table. The board signed, one by one. Pens scraped paper in slow unison, the sound of signatures becoming law. When the last director lifted his hand, the ombudsman nodded. "By record of this session, the Birch Lake Homeowners Association acknowledges the new charter and accepts the terms of easement filed by Mr. Keene." Applause rippled through the room, not loud, not theatrical, just human, the kind that sounds like relief. Walt clapped once, hard. Marisol leaned back with a quiet smile. Claudia remained in the back row, arms folded tight, jaw trembling as the ombudsman announced, "Effective immediately. The HOA board shall operate under provisional oversight until next election." She stood abruptly. "This is a coup." "It's compliance," I said softly. "And it's overdue." The ombudsman raised his hand. "Mrs. Mercer, please remain civil. You've been listed as under investigation for conflict of interest regarding vendor contracts. You'll receive formal notice." Her face drained of color. She grabbed her bag and left without another word. Outside, dusk had settled across the lake, amber streaks cutting through mist. The gate, still tagged with that orange sticker, reflected the setting sun like a wound finally closing. Marisol gathered the signed copies into her briefcase. "Congratulations," she said. "You just rewrote the book on HOA reform without firing a legal shot." "Not just me," I said, glancing toward the crowd dispersing outside. They were ready to believe fairness again. She tapped her pen against the folder. "Still, you built the bridge." Walt chuckled. "More like bought the land under it." That night the community board buzzed, not with insults but gratitude. Messages like, "About time we had transparency," and "Thank you for standing up." I read them in silence, the glow of the screen lighting the binder beside me. My wife's photo rested atop it. Her smile faded, but unbroken. The next morning the county trucks returned to remove the gate. It came down piece by piece, bolts clattering into metal bins. Claudia's husband tried to object, but the officer read from the removal order. "Unpermitted structure on private parcel, removal authorized." Neighbors stood watching, some filming. A little boy clapped when the final post came loose and fell into the grass with a hollow clang. The open path to the Lake stretched wide again, sun rippling across water that no longer belonged to fear. If you've ever seen power collapse in real time, you know it's not fireworks. It's paper and silence. One wrong clause after another coming undone. The dominoes didn't stop there. 2 directors resigned the next week, citing personal reasons. The management firm terminated its contract, citing non-renewal due to governance changes. Insurance reinstated coverage, but only under the new compliance plan. The headline in the Gazette read, "Birch Lake, HOA under new charter, residents regain access rights." Aaron sent me a copy, circled a line in blue ink. "Transparency replaces intimidation." I pinned it above my desk. Later that week, my son and I walked the open trail to the dock. He carried his fishing rod. I carried nothing but breath. "It's weird seeing it open," he said. "Feels right though, doesn't it?" He nodded. "Like the lake can breathe again." We sat there for an hour without speaking, the water lapping against the posts, the same rhythm that used to calm Sarah when words failed. I remembered her saying once, "Every fight worth having is about who gets to share the view." Back at home, Marisol called with one last update. The County Ethics Board accepted the reform charter as model policy. They're distributing it to other HOAs statewide. I laughed, first genuine laugh in months. Guess Birch Lake just became a case study. "Yeah," she said, "a good one." If you've been following this far, what would you reform first in your own community? Term limits, open budgets, or full access rights? Drop it below. These stories aren't just mine. They're blueprints for anyone tired of being ruled instead of represented. Walt stopped by later that evening, handing me a manila envelope. "You'll want to see this," he said. Inside was a photo of the old gate lying in pieces beside the road, sunlight cutting through the chain links. Someone had scrawled on the metal in chalk, "We're free to fish again." He grinned. "Kids did it. Hope you don't mind." "I don't mind at all," I said. The next morning, an email arrived from a neighboring community, Pine Hollow HOA. Their subject line read, "Need guidance on fair reform. Can you advise?" And that's when it hit me. The story wasn't over. It was expanding. I stared at that email for a long time, long enough that the cursor blinked itself into a metronome for thought. "Can you advise?" 3 words that turned a personal war into a civic calling. I typed back, "Happy to share what worked. Just make sure your fight is lawful, documented, and for everyone's good, not just yours." Hit send, close the laptop, and watch the reflection of morning light crawl across my desk. 2 weeks had passed since the gate came down. The neighborhood looked different, cleaner somehow, not because of maintenance but because tension itself had washed away. The board held its first open record session under the new charter. Residents actually attended, laughing, debating without fear. Walt sat beside me, scribbling notes like a kid in class. Marisol stood near the back, leaning against the wall, arms folded, but smiling like she'd seen a miracle built on statutes and persistence. The meeting ended with unanimous approval of the Community Restoration Agreement. The new bylaws were certified on the spot. Term limits, 2 years. Ethics Committee, independent and rotating. Annual audit, mandatory and published. Fee rollback, 10% to start. Transparency clause, irrevocable. When the ombudsman stamped the last page, the sound echoed in the hall like punctuation on a decade of abuse. Afterward, neighbors gathered by the reopened dock for what they called Lake Day. No speeches, no ribbon cutting, just kids running, grills smoking, old-timers telling stories. Someone played a guitar, off-key but joyful. My son skipped stones across the surface and shouted when one bounced 4 times. The crowd cheered. Marisol handed me a paper cup of lemonade. "You look lighter," she said. "Feels like gravity finally caught up with fairness," I said. She laughed softly. "Maybe write that down. Could be your next case motto." Walt joined us, thermos in hand. "They should name that strip after your wife," he said. I hesitated, then nodded. She'd hate the attention, but she'd love the intent. We carved a small wooden sign and mounted it at the base of the dock that evening. The lettering burned with a soldering iron, steady and simple. Sarah's Walk. Public access, 2025. That became our symbolic act, the final chord of the story. Before I left, I looked back once. The sun dipped low, gold reflecting off the water like a mirror to everything lost and found. I whispered, "We did it, not as victory, but as closure." If you believe I fought the right way and this is how it should end, say a few words in the comments for your friend. Subscribe so the next story reaches you first. And if you've ever seen wrong power crumble into right, share this so others learn from it. That part's on us. What changed after? Claudia resigned under consent decree, barred from serving on any board for 5 years. Her husband's company lost its contract and faced state fines for unlicensed work. The insurance carrier reinstated community coverage at a reduced rate. The HOA's bank released the frozen reserve once audits cleared. The Gazette published a final feature, From Conflict to Charter Reform. Birch Lake becomes model for HOA transparency. State legislators even cited it during a committee hearing on homeowner rights. As for me, I still fix infrastructure, but now my side projects are legal ones, helping communities document, reform, rebuild. Every binder I open carries that same first tab: evidence, wound, leverage, reform. Sometimes, late at night, I still hear the sound of that gate bay, dang unbolted, the metallic clink followed by silence. It reminds me justice isn't always loud. It's steady, lawful, patient. And when another HOA letter lands on someone's doorstep with threats and fines and false authority, maybe they'll remember Birch Lake. Maybe they'll read the fine print and realize they have more power than they think. Because every lake, every neighborhood, every patch of land under pressure deserves one person who refuses to back down quietly. And somewhere out there, another email will arrive with 3 words. Can you advise?